You're about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
Back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So a very common question we get asked is, what did COVID do to our memories? Is COVID putting us at risk of dementia for those of us that got COVID? Now, all I could say is personally, I've noticed changes in my memory. I just don't have the memory like I used to. Now, I am 5 years older. But I noticed a big difference after COVID. And COVID, for me, gave me a really bad headache. Sorry, I had horrible headaches that I couldn't get rid of. I had a fever. I had a cough that wouldn't go away. It was like a bad flu. And I've had flu that was worse. But I just didn't like the way my memory was. And so I worry. Now, I still have memory. I've still passed my tests. I'm still board certified. Now, still memorize facts, but I mean, I had a really good memory. I mean, really good. And I don't like that change. But do we have any scientific proof that COVID is messing with us? Well, top scientists are warning us that if you did have COVID, you may be at greater risk of developing dementia before you turn 70. Now, this study comes out of, I believe, the UK. Actually, no, the study I think came out of University of Texas Health San Antonio. But Dr. Gabriel de Erasquin, a neurologist at the University of Texas Health San Antonio, being reported by Daily Mail, is exploring the link between COVID and studies showing those over 57 who have suffered long COVID have the profile of a person with very early Alzheimer's, unquote. And according to the Wall Street Journal, the researcher said it doesn't look in older adults that this is a reversible process. Now, that's frightening. Now, he is conducting also a study on 4,000 patients who contracted COVID when they were over 60. His early data suggested that up to a third of these individuals aged over 65 who have had long-lasting symptoms met the criteria for mild cognitive impairment. This is a huge 4 or 5-fold increase in prevalence compared to a group of patients the same age without long COVID symptoms. Now, mild cognitive impairment isn't always a precursor to full-blown dementia. Some people can still do fine with mild cognitive impairment. But 1 in 6 who show mild cognitive impairment go on to have full-blown dementia within a year. That's according to their research. So long COVID is where you have symptoms that persist weeks after your COVID illness. And the pathophysiology behind that could be either the virus is still alive or the inflammation it left isn't getting resolved. Now, I'm still confused by long COVID because it sounds more like, well, maybe the virus sets up shop or it hides out, and everyone says, no, the virus is gone out of your body by day 14. Well, then what is explaining some of these long COVID symptoms? Is it that there was damage? We know COVID damaged lungs. I notice now when I hike up mountains, I do not have the same stamina that I did. I understand I'm 5 years older, but this was a little bit more accelerated than I would have thought normal age would have done. I don't have the lung capacity I did. This concerns me. So what do we do? Just talking about how we might be screwed doesn't help. I want to do something. How do you prevent if COVID did mess us up? And many people ridiculed me for getting the COVID vaccine. Listen, I think the COVID vaccine should have never been mandatory. Nobody should have felt forced. And whoever wanted to take it, it should have been a personal choice. But it was my personal choice to take it because I was seeing people die in the hospitals. Now, this wasn't what I read. I was in the hospitals. You could see it. But additionally, I was more fearful of the unknown of the virus than I was of the unknown of the vaccine. And I didn't want to get COVID in me. Because when I had COVID, it wasn't fun. And I thought there were more benefits to preventing getting COVID than not. Now, on the other end, getting COVID, gaining natural immunity, which I did, I think did make me stronger. But I just didn't know what it would do to my brain, my heart, my lungs. We've seen it affect people's kidneys, liver. We saw people become diabetic after that. It's a messed up virus. Wouldn't be surprised if it was tinkered with. And I've always thought it was leaked from the lab in Wuhan, China. So what do we do? How do we prevent possible dementia from this? Well, don't allow there to be any other factors accelerating dementia. If you smoke, stop smoking. If you drink a lot of alcohol, cut that back. If you eat unhealthy, eat better. If you have sleep apnea, where you don't get enough oxygen to the brain, get evaluated for that. And then if you do qualify, get on CPAP. Exercise more. Keep your mind busy. But the problem is we get into our old habits and we don't, we think, well, I'm getting older, so I don't have to do this and I can now start to relax and I can. No. If you want to live longer and see your grandkids and be active and look as amazing as some of these other individuals are when they, age and they look like they're in great shape. I just saw a picture of Richard Dean Anderson, who I think is in his 70s. Yeah, he looks older, but he's still cute. I always had a crush on Richard Dean Anderson. MacGyver, right? So, I'm not going to stress about what COVID did, but I am going to light a little fire in my butt to try to slow down any changes that this could have done on my brain, my lung health, and I'm going to try to beat it. So talk to your medical provider if you're having any memory loss or cognitive changes and see what can be done preventatively. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH. Dr. Daliah here. Are you tired, burned out, gaining weight, succumbing to the daily pressures of life? Well, how's your dopamine doing? How you feel right now, how you'll feel an hour from now, and how you'll feel next week is completely reliant on your dopamine. Our daily motivation and willingness to push through challenges depends on the intricate chemical process dopamine provides. Christian Kalikas and I created Deploying Dopamine, a book that tells you what dopamine is, when it dysfunctions, and how to successfully deploy it when needed. Find Deploying Dopamine on Amazon today. Check it out.
Carl Amari here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you, and be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
At Hotshot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems and their solutions. For example,
Hotshot Secret Stiction Eliminator.
Stiction, that sticky friction, undermines the performance of diesel engines. Third-party ASTM testing verifies that Stiction Eliminator removes 2 times as much stiction than any alternative on the retail shelf. Stiction Eliminator is formulated to be left in the engine oil. It works as you drive.
Available at truck stops, Tractor Supply, O'Reilly's Auto Parts, and online at HotShotSecret.com. Hotshot Secret. Powered by science.
In a study, it was found that 33% of 44 herbal supplements had no trace of the advertised herb. Don't let that happen to you. Hi, this is Dr. Mitch. If you want to ensure quality, please go to TotalWellness.com. Supplements made for physicians, only now available to you too. TotalWellness.com, helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.
We're back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Daliah, 1-877 DOCDALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X at Dr. Daliah, Facebook, The Dr. Daliah Show, and on YouTube, click like and subscribe. So a question that we have been getting for years is, what is the difference between a PA and an MD and a DO and NP, nurse practitioner? And a very, very common question that gets asked is, I'm seeing a physician assistant. When should I ask to see a physician? Or is seeing a physician assistant good enough? I love physician assistants. Everyone I worked with the exception of one who was stealing, and we had to let them go because they were ordering supplies and taking them home. From a medicine standpoint, though, every physician assistant I had was fantastic. Just fantastic. And I've seen physician assistants myself. And so the physician assistant education is similar to an MD's or DO's, but it is a little lower by a few years. So, for me to become a doctor, and I had probably the fewest years of most doctors. So I went through 4 years undergrad. I was able to do an undergrad degree in 4 years. Then medical school was 4 years. And then I had 3 years residency. Some residencies are 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 years post. But my residency was one of the shortest 3 years. I was pregnant, only took my 2 weeks off, so I didn't have to extend the residency. So I never had to extend the residency or medical school or take a gap year. So I was able to basically do all my training, right? 4 years high school, 4 years undergrad. We won't count high school. So 4 years undergrad, 4 years medical school, 3 years internship. That's 11 years. Most physician assistants, at least 6 to 7 years. Because after their 4 years, you used to not necessarily need an undergrad degree. Now you do for most physician assistant programs. So they at least have 4 years undergrad, and then they have about 27 months. So about 2 to 3 years postgraduate training. Their training is very comprehensive and very concentrated. And so, I've seen what PAs have had to do, and for many, it may even be considered harder than what some people have to do in medical school. And so they have a shorter amount of time to learn because, PAs are needed in droves and needed in terms of their, assisting, physicians as well as bolstering the kind of poorly staffed healthcare network that we have, where they are concentrated in their studies. And then many of them can specialize, whether it's surgery or gynecology, et cetera. They have to be board certified. They have to pass the same standards. And so what people have liked about physician assistants is they could access them. Whereas the doctor is being torn in multiple different areas and maybe going to the hospital or, overseeing patients or this, oftentimes people could see their PA on a regular basis. The PAs that I hired, fantastic. They were amazing. I would overview their charts. I overviewed every one of their charts right on the money. And the physician assistants that have the time to work with the doctor, they get to learn how that practice operates. They get to learn about those patients, and they get to also learn how not to get sued, how to not miss cancer, how to not miss things. And so the physician assistant that gets to work with the medical provider and their doctor as close as possible and gets that access to the doctor, are absolutely fantastic. And in fact, many states are looking for autonomy for physician assistants. Now, people say, but then why doesn't everybody just become a physician assistant? Why wouldn't anybody become a medical doctor? Why? I mean, what's the purpose of going through medical school and taking out all those loans if you could become a physician assistant, take care of patients like you want to, and, get a following and patients love you? Well, it depends on what field you want to go. Not all physician assistants get to do, certain specialties. And so many doctors, if you want to be a cardiovascular surgeon, yes, you could still, be a PA that does surgery, but, you have more opportunities, obviously, as a doctor. It's a lot more expensive to go through medical school, but PA school is not cheap either. And then the autonomy is an issue. Until states allow PAs to have their own autonomy where they don't have to be under the supervision of a doctor. MDs, DOs, they have their own license. They don't necessarily have to have another doctor oversee everything they do. I mean, in some cases, when they're trying to get privileges, et cetera, they might be, but for the most part, you open up your practice. This is your practice. The reason why I think PAs and I are fantastic is because and maybe it's just the ones I've worked with and the ones I know, is they don't take shortcuts. They don't take shortcuts. They're not allowed to. They were never trained that way. A lot of us doctors were trained under doctors who did some things half-assed. I am blown away at what some of my attendings taught me, and I'm like, no, I would never do that in private practice. Yet, if a doctor has a PA, they have to make sure that that PA is an arm of them, and that PA is not going to miss cancer or miss something. And so they teach the PA not only how to, use what they learned in school to be great diagnosticians, but also to make sure they're communicative and they communicate with the doctor. So PAs can't just go in, do their thing, and then go and golf like sadly some doctors have a stereotype of doing. They have to communicate with their doctor. They have to communicate with their patients. And if patients don't like them, doctors got cocky. I can't tell you how many doctors have been rude. I just heard about another doctor that actually didn't realize that somebody was a family member of mine. And so, boy, did I find out that doctor was insulting and rude to them. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Because you don't get to see that on a personal level, but patients get to see a whole different side. I'm like, are you kidding me? Really? PAs, I've never heard a PA do that. They wouldn't dare. They could get fired. And so the bedside manner is amazing. Their attention to detail is amazing. Their communication is amazing. And I got to tell you, their medicine is right on. Now, I can't speak for all PAs, but, if you are fortunate enough to have a provider that you are seeing on a regular basis, I don't care if they're nurse practitioner, physician assistant, MD, DO, you hold on to them with dear life. Now, if ever you are concerned about a medical plan, you could always, get a second opinion. I think you should get a second opinion no matter who your surgeon is or whatever. Get a second opinion so you're comfortable with that plan. But when people say, but they had less years in school than an MD. Well, my years in school was, more broad because I was family medicine. So I had to have pediatrics. I had to have OB. I had to have gynecology. I had to have dermatology. I had to have neurology, urology. I loved all of that. But many PAs, they know what they want to go into. And so their studies are more concentrated on what they need. So somebody could make an argument that a lot of medical students are taking courses and things that they don't necessarily utilize. And that time could be better spent in patient care or studying what they are going to be utilizing. Now, I'm so glad I learned how to deliver babies. I love delivering babies. That was fantastic. Do I deliver babies anymore? No. I do not think that learning was a waste by any means. But most PAs, if they're not going to be doing OB, they're not going to have PAs deliver babies. And so the schooling, although it might look like they're doing less or fewer years in terms of their schooling, doesn't mean necessarily they're learning less per se, because if they are learning what is concentrated and what is needed. And to get into a PA school is very competitive. And so people will ask, but, get into an MD or a DO school or a PA school or a nurse practitioner school. Did they do that because they couldn't? No. I mean, there are individuals who don't want the hassle, that don't want the lawsuits, that don't want the burnout that they see other clinicians have in medicine. And I've spoken to PA students going, I didn't want to be burned out like doctors. I didn't want to age more than I had to. I didn't want the responsibility of the clinic. I wanted to work and see patients. I want most of my efforts to be all about sitting there with the patient. So yeah, there's people that are finding the PA specialty or the PA career to be exactly how they want to do medicine. I had no idea becoming a doctor or how much of my day was paperwork and was administrative stuff. Patient time, the time I spent with patients was maybe 10 to 20%. And all the rest of the time was insurance and all the other BS. I'm like, are you kidding me? So PAs get to spend more time with patients. So, whether you see a nurse practitioner, a PA, an MD, DO, you want a medical provider that's going to listen, that's going to educate you, that's going to explain why they're making that decision. And if you have that provider, you're golden. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH. Don't go away.
At Hot Shot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems and their solutions. For example,
Diesel fuel cetane levels.
in many states, the cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts. Due to a cleaner burn, there are less hydrocarbons and particulate matter in your exhaust. This reduces the blockage of your diesel particulate filter. Using Diesel Extreme generates 83% less DPF regeneration. The 6-in-1 Diesel Extreme formula also includes the most concentrated detergent on the market, lubricity enhancer, water demulsifier, rust and corrosion inhibitors, and a fuel stabilizer.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
Back at the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Well, I'm sure many of you saw this headline, did a double take, where doctors are recommending you do a fart walk after you eat dinner. A fart walk. I couldn't do that to my neighbors, honestly. I try to live in a part of town that doesn't have a lot of smog. The last thing I need to do is produce any more yellow or green neon clouds. But apparently doctors are recommending that people do fart walks, that it could prevent cancer, prevent heart disease, prevent diabetes. To after dinner, go out there and just let it blow. It is the latest health and wellness trend, and they are embracing doing this evening stroll and then, I guess, expelling the air when you need to. This was coined, according to New York Post, by Canadian cookbook author Marilyn Smith. And doctors are jumping on this saying, yeah, that's great. Do it. So they say going for a fart walk after dinner is something that is going to help you age wonderfully. She and her husband go together for 60-minute fart walks after dinner. And they do this to keep the romance alive. Now, I like to walk the dog after dinner, and the dog farts. It's horrible. Oh, my gosh. And you know what we need to devise? Where you walk the dog behind you. See, the dog walks in front of me, and then I'm downwind. I got to do something because that dog, Lord have mercy. It's because the dog eats the cat food, and they're not supposed to. So, according to, I guess, the author, she and her husband eat a lot of fiber, so they have gas. She says everybody does. So you fart when you walk. She said, but the main reason we do the fart walk is by walking for as little as 2 minutes, we're helping reduce our chances of developing type 2 diabetes. Now, she's not wrong. If everybody thinks, well, if I eat, I can't exercise because you can't swim after you eat. In fact, some of the best burning of your calories is after you ingest the meal. So if you eat and then you decide to go for a walk, and so I live in southern Nevada, so the weather is amazing at night. I mean, except in the winter when it's really, really cold. But, during the summers, we could only walk at night. And so after you eat, although we like to eat early when it's still daylight, because we just think it's healthier for our metabolism, if you walk after you eat, it does curb and slow down your risk of diabetes. And apparently we're doing something right because type 2 diabetes deaths or deaths due to diabetes has dropped, according to the CDC. death from kidney disease, heart disease. All right, so we're making some movement. Well, why? Well, endocrinologists and primary care providers and, PAs and nurse practitioners are recommending that people get out there and move. And so after you eat dinner, if you go out there and walk, now what about the farting? Why does this come to play? Is this all clickbait? Because I don't think it's clickbait, because when people see fart, they usually want to turn the page. It's not a very attractive clickbait. But I've always said this, you can't hold it in. You trying to hold it in messes with your bowels. It causes distension. It causes constipation. The reason why you pass gas is because that helps you pass your stool. You get these big mass movements. And for it to move across feet and feet and feet of bowel, you need the air to move it. And in order for that air to move it, it's got to get expelled. And so eating high fiber is extremely important. A lot of people avoid it because they don't want to be gassy. Well, you could train your body on when to have the gas. And so you could eat a lot of your fiber at a certain meal, although I really like it, evened out throughout the day. The more you even it out, the less gas you have. But if you're like, look, I'm always home, I'm not at work, I'm not on air, I could do my gassy meals at night. Hey, you know what? Just get the fiber in. I don't care how. Just get the fiber in. And then getting that released and moving, in an outside atmosphere may be helpful. I'm sure the dogs are not going to like it. And what's also nice is you don't have a lot of neighbors around. Although I am pretty sure that the dogs, I'd wake up the dogs. I don't know. We look at things that happen with our body as, oh, it's gross. I don't want to look at my stool. Oh, man, I had to poop, or I had to. It's interesting when somebody freaks out about having diarrhea. Diarrhea is a blessing for a lot of us. If you pick up a pathogen and your body picks up on that and it decides to get rid of it over the next day or two, as long as you don't get dehydrated, as long as the diarrhea stops, it does its job, your body just flushed out something that could have caused some major harm. And what's the first thing people do? They run and take Imodium, or they run and take an antidiarrheal. They're like, oh, no. Same thing with gas. So like, oh, no, I'm gassy. I need to hold it in. Get to an elevator, right? Or get to your car, or go outside, or get to a toilet and do what you need to do. Get that air out. Because it doesn't help you come in. We hold and hold. Same thing with pee. I'm watching a movie or I'm on air and I'm like, I'm going to hold it. I'm holding it. Get it out. What happens if I don't pee? I'll get a UTI. Okay. Your body knows when to dump things. Burping. If you don't let out the burp, that air is going to go somewhere else. So, what do we take home from this? Well, one is exercise more than you do. And even if it's just a light walk, walking after dinner is fantastic. And if you notice you're getting, a way to release the air, that's better than at night doing Dutch ovens and things like that, because that definitely doesn't help the bedroom. But don't be always fearful about things that your body has to emit or eructate or expel. Now, getting a lot of gas could be a sign of malabsorption. It could be a sign of gallbladder disease. So we'll have people call in going, I always have gas. And so the first question I ask is, do you have regular bowel movements? Because you might be having gas because your body is trying to push stuff out. I also ask how their gallbladder's functioning and has that ever been looked at? I also ask, are you tolerating certain foods? Many people have gone gluten-free, not because they really have a gluten allergy, which is a protein in bread, but because they notice that when they eat gluten-free, they have less gas. Is it because of all the additives? A lot of things that are gluten-free have less crap in them than a lot of the junk food we eat. And so for those of you that do struggle with a lot of gas, one, make sure you're regular. Because if you're passing your bowels, then you don't have to have that air push, and you don't necessarily build up that air. Two, talk to a medical provider to make sure that everything is working as it needs to. Now, we bring up ovaries and why bloating could be a sign of ovarian cancer. If you, God forbid, have gynecological malignancy or colonic or intestinal malignancy, that could manifest as gas. Now, some people say, well, should I take probiotics? Should I? Well, if you've messed up your gut microbiome, But if you haven't messed up your gut microbiome and you're eating well, you might not necessarily need the probiotics. However, if a doctor thinks or a medical provider thinks, yes, those probiotics are going to help, again, you got to talk to somebody. Yeah, and some of us might need to have a GI exam. My GI doctor is Dr. Yakov Shapashikov, and he's awesome, and he's done my colonoscopies, etc. And I talked to him about the diet, and he gives me a list of foods that remember we talked about FODMAPs and irritable bowel, where there are certain foods that you might be taking in that could be causing extra gas that you don't realize based on how you digest them. For me, a bad one is onions. For some reason, I can't digest onions. I used to. I could eat raw onions, and then all of a sudden, I stopped making the enzyme to break it down. So now I use Beano, which are enzymes to help me break down certain vegetables, or I just avoid onions. Although I'm better now because I just forced myself to say, you know what, you're going to have to relearn how to eat onions because I just love onions. I season with them. I just do. Onions are fantastic. Mushrooms, I could live without. So get yourself checked out. We want to prevent constipation. We want to prevent diabetes. I think the American Heart Association recommends 150 minutes of exercise a week. Cancer, I think American Cancer Society recommends 150 to 300 minutes. Walking is a great form of exercise. Farting might not expel a lot of calories, but you do expel gas. 1-877 Doc Daliah. Hi guys, Dr. Daliah here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms, whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping. Addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdaliah.com. Check it out.
At Hotshot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems. For example,
Diesel fuel cetane levels.
the cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hotshot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts.
Hot Shot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hot Shot Secret, powered by science.
Self-reliance. It's not a phrase we hear much in our culture these days. It might conjure up images of pioneers, the West, rifles, strapping men, and strong women. But what does it mean for us in today's world? The New American Magazine has just released its latest collector's edition, Self-Reliance, Foundation of Freedom. In it, the New American authors outline the necessity of self-reliance for a free people, tips for self-reliant living, and the importance of not giving up hope. This unique edition includes articles on the self-sufficiency of the founders, preparing for a worst-case scenario, firearms, financial self-reliance, the importance of community, and many other topics by expert writers. Now, for a limited time, the New American is offering a bundle of 3 collector's editions, Self-Reliance, The Great Reset, and Trump World, for just $19.95. Available at shopjbs.org. Visit shopjbs.org today.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Daliah, 1-877 DOCDALI. So this is something that's been bothering me that I want to talk about really quickly. So you keep hearing in the news that Michelle Obama and Barack Obama are going to get divorced. That Michelle Obama looks unhappy. Barack Obama looks unhappy. Michelle Obama did not go to the funeral of former President Jimmy Carter. She also didn't go to the inauguration. So she wasn't seen publicly with Obama, but then with her husband, Barack Obama, former President Barack Obama. But then they were out to dinner a couple nights ago. And I know everybody's kind of been like, all intrigued by their relationship, because to see a couple divorce, especially as so high profile as that, It intrigues people. And Tucker Carlson said that it's obvious. He was actually, I think Tucker Carlson was on the Megyn Kelly show. And he said that former Lady Michelle really dislikes her husband, he said, and it's super obvious. He said, I'm not saying that to be catty. He says, I think I'm trying to feel compassion for her, but her hostility toward the guy is unbelievable. He said there's nothing more destabilizing than an unhappy marriage. And he says that I think Megyn Kelly said, I almost never say negative things about Doug, her husband. She says he's not perfect, but when I think about him, I don't immediately go to whatever's negative. I go to what's positive and what I love about him. And so they apparently, people have been saying that they need to work on their marriage. And they have to, according to Tucker Carlson, there's nothing more destabilizing an unhappy marriage. And he thinks that's why he believes Michelle's life exemplifies why it's important to focus on marriage. So I just want to talk about this, for a second here. I wish them well. I don't want to see any couple fall apart. I wouldn't be surprised if they're having issues. It could just be Michelle Obama was having a medical procedure, and that's why she didn't go to the funeral or the inauguration. But when people say you need to focus on your marriage, that's a pretty heavy statement. Now, a lot of us think our marriage is something that's automatic. That's a given. That's on autopilot. So we're worried about our job, worried about our kids, we're worried about the in-laws, but we think the marriage is going to handle itself. And then all of a sudden you notice you haven't had date night. You haven't told each other you love each other. You haven't been intimate. And you look and you go, are we actually working on our marriage? Well, the marriage is a partnership. And if you have a career, or if you have a business, let's say you're CEO, don't you meet with the partners? Don't you find out what it is the board or the partners need? Don't you meet with your employees? If you're a good employer, you meet with the employees, or you meet with the employee managers, so that you know they're getting what they need and you know what's needed by all. Not a lot of people do that. We're busy. Now, I talk to my husband every day. I make sure that. I make sure I spend time with him every day. I make sure I tell him I love him. But to focus on a marriage, that takes work. Now, people say, well, I went to counseling. Yeah, but if you didn't like the counselor, or if, one of my friends went to counseling, and when the soon-to-be ex-wife had said, did you know he voted for Trump? And the counselor looked at him and said, what? You looked at him with disgust. Well, that's not, you can't really work on your marriage when you have that sort of lack of neutrality and objectivity by your counselor. And so, there's various ways to work and focus on a marriage. But then the other, concept is if two people are not in love, how does focusing on the marriage work? The reason why some people don't want to focus on their marriage is because they don't love the person anymore. They've outgrown them. They've grown apart, or they might have never really been in love. And they got married because somebody got pregnant, or they thought it was the right thing to do, or the families wanted it, or they had to get married and they didn't want to be single. They didn't want to be alone, and they just can't stand each other anymore. So when people say, well, you didn't focus on your marriage, you didn't focus, if you fall out of love or you were never in love, there's not a lot you could do with the focusing. And so many marital problems are because people realize I'm really not in love with them anymore, or I don't love them, but I don't want to get a divorce, so let's just kind of be roommates. And it's heartbreaking because if one person loves the other and the other one, it's not reciprocal, that's tough. But also, they talk about, and I'm not here to defend Michelle Obama. Now, I want them to have privacy and do what they need to do, but she's not being private. She's on podcasts. And so, people are judging what she says on podcasts. Well, the problem is podcasts, and I've learned this, they don't want, everything's fine, everything's good, next question. People want meat. Look at how excited everybody got when Barack Obama said he was in the doghouse for something, where Michelle Obama was mad at him about something. And people eat that stuff up. It makes him more human. It makes him look like he's one of us. You know, if Barack Obama has to deal with a house full of women, you know, he's like one of us. People are drawn to that. They want to know that whoever they're listening to or idolizing, you know, is also human and has to put his pants on one leg at a time. So when somebody says, well, all you hear is Michelle Obama kind of talk about her husband more negatively, well, she's on a podcast. They're trying to get ratings. She's not going to say, I love my husband. He's the love of my life. Next question. That's not exciting. So I wouldn't read into that, but I wouldn't be surprised if there's something going on. They've been married a long time. They have the stresses of a presidency, and some really bad things happened during that presidency. I mean, Obamacare, I that's enough to divorce, Obama. Just the Affordable Care Act was enough. With the exception of pre-existing conditions and physicals, that was a big cluster in a seventh. So I wouldn't be surprised if somebody wants to divorce Barack Obama after that. But, we keep being told, focus on your marriage. All marriages are salvageable. I don't believe they are. I wish they were. When I got engaged, I heard friends and acquaintances say, well, I'm not going to be the last one single. Well, get your boyfriend to poop or get off the pot. A big, shall we say, occurrence that happens is somebody gets engaged and then everybody starts getting the bug going, well, I don't want to look like I'm single. Now I have to. And then they look to whoever they're dating going, well, you need to step up. I think I love you. So many people get married when they really weren't ready to, or they should have never. My biological clock is ticking. I don't want to be 30 when I start having kids. I want to have kids before I'm 30. But you're 29 and a half, and we just met 3 weeks ago. So, if your marriage is not as ideal as you think it would be, see a counselor. Make sure the counselor is neutral and objective. If at all you aren't picking up on that, then find a new counselor. Or talk to your medical provider. Or talk to a priest or rabbi, or clergy. But also find out that just because your marriage doesn't look like the way it is on TV doesn't necessarily mean there's something wrong with the marriage. People think, gosh, we only have sex a couple times a month. We're in trouble. Not always. There's a lot of happy marriages where sex a couple times a month is fine. But then there's others that are having sex every day and they are horrible for each other. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH. Don't go away.
Did you know that healthy arteries make a gas? Yes, actually 3 known gases. Hi, I'm Dr. Mitch, and nitric oxide is a gas that's readily made all day long to keep our arteries open by relaxing the blood vessel walls. By doing this, our circulation is increased, bringing blood, oxygen, and nutrients to every part of your body. Both age and poor diet can lead to a loss of this precious gas, and in turn, blood pressure can go up, energy can go down, and you can get tingling in your hands and feet. Well, our product, Ultimate Nitric Oxide, can easily help fix this lack of nitric oxide. Go to TotalWellness.com. That's TotalWellness.com, where we are helping you to look good, feel good, and enjoy total wellness.